The Commission is pleased to announce that it has satisfied itself that the conditions for free and fair elections were met and that the results for 213 councils are declared as final.
Well, good evening once again, South Africa. It's another Sunday and welcome to the final edition of Service Delivery Gauge for 2021. And it's been so good being with you, and I believe that you also found this program meaningful. Now, as the public broadcaster, we gave you, our viewers, an opportunity to gauge the quality of service delivery in your area. I'm your host, Sakina Kamwendo, and in on sign language for us this evening is Fortune Madlala. Now, elections have come and gone, and we're asking you this week, how did you find the 2021 local government elections? Did you go and vote? Are you satisfied with the party and the councillor that won in your area? Please talk to us. Tell us what your views are. Our WhatsApp number, 083-272-8341. And you can also call us, and I'll prompt you to do so later on in the show. The number is 011-714-8052. So as you know, we have been asking you all day as well to send us your tweets at SABC News. That's our handle. And our Facebook page is Service Delivery Gauge, Gauge spelled G-A-U-G-E. Now, this show, and I know you have this memorized by now, it has been in your living rooms for the past 2 months. And I know it just feels like it's been so much longer, but it's been only 2 months as we led up to the local government elections. And our first port of call was, of course, my hometown of Standerton in the Likwa municipality, which is, of course, in Mpumalanga. From there, we went to the Vembe district municipality in Limpopo. Then it was over to Midvaal in Gauteng, Makana in the Eastern Cape, Msunduzi in KwaZulu-Natal, and Overstrand in the Western Cape. So in case you forgot, let's just refresh your memory quickly by taking a quick jog down memory lane.
The Service Delivery Gauge team visited several municipalities around the country in the past 2 months and highlighted service delivery challenges residents face on a daily basis. Let's take a look at the highlights of the previous inserts we aired on this show.
Gogo Kabongwenya has been residing here in Standerton for many years. Close to her home, there is a dumping site and water running down the ground.
I'm in Pataga, Blenda, living Goli. Nabantu Bakumgela, Konamanja Kushone, Uputum Dal. Atakula, wa figure like Hazobonum Cool. Wakumgela la, Konala la.
The people who are being brought here to administer this place, they are here just to squander the money.
Toilet imanje blockile. Njengoba ngisho ngisebenza ngiyi-1. Imali toilet iblockile. Mina ngizama ukuthi ngithole umuntu azilungisa imali.
In the Vembe district, we visit Mamvuka village, which is located in the northeast of the Makado local municipality. Here we are going to meet an 18-year-old matriculant, Ribwani Magadani, who is facing water and sanitation challenges in her rural community.
Ezi zwithu ndi zwithu zwine zwa khou itea kha vhagudiswa vhanzhi ngauri kha uku kusi maḓi a khou konḓa u wanala. Vhunzhi ha vhathu vha ḓa hanefha vha tshi ka maḓi hanefha vha tshi kuvha hanefha. Maḓi a henoni a shumiswa zwithu zwinzhi.
Ra khou shuma khayo nga nḓila heneyi. Ndi nga si vhuya nda ni vhudza uri ri bva lini ngori heyi miṅwaha ndi kale ri khou shengela nga nḓila yeneyi.
Hafhanoni huna potholes dzine dzi khou tou hopfisa vhukuma. U tshi tou sedza madindi a hone a khou ita khombo vhukuma.
Welcome to Meyerton, a suburb within the Midvaal municipality. This is Rian Harding, a resident and a businessman in the area. He has lived here for most of his life.
Like I said, I'm here all my life in Meyerton, and I travel quite a bit all over the places collecting vehicles. as far as Cape Town, and you see the conditions of our roads and the infrastructure around Maitan compared to other smaller cities and so on. You can't compare these two to each other, in Midval you hardly see any portals, and if there's a portal, it's being fixed and sorted immediately,
At Swatkopi's farm, 67-year-old Pindile Chabalala holds a totally different view. She has been living in the area since 1989.
Izindlu, ikliniki, ugesi unokusihlupha kakhulu, amanzi. Angeke ngivume ukuthi wenza kakuhle umasipala weMidval ngoba akakasenzeli lutho thina kule ndawo.
Many think of Makhanda, formerly known as Grahamstown, as a tidy, scenic city. Home to the prestigious Rhodes University, some of the country's top private schools and the National Arts Festival. But drive into the busy city centre and it becomes clear why many people here are fed up.
Hayi ke amanzi ke ona uthi wasela lapha emlonyeni ayisorate and ke abantu abaninzi balapha baphangeli funeke beselela amanzi.
Sawakhuphela amandlela ngenye ngamabhakede. Zange kube khona thitha.
Cobesville, a residential area in Pietermaritzburg in the KwaZulu-Natal province, falls under Umsunduzi municipality. Recently, we visited the area and asked some residents about a range of challenges they are facing in relation to service delivery as well as the illegal connection in their community.
The services we get is not up to standard. When we have issues, they actually get back to us 2 days, 3 days, or 4, 5, 6 hours later. And then with the water issues, we are not informed about when the water is going to get cut off. We are not informed when the lights are going to get cut off.
Engonweni is a rural residential area which lies on the border of eThekwini municipality and Ilembe municipality. For services, the area is administered by the eThekwini Metro.
Okushuthi ngoba ama rates asiwakhokhi ngeke sithole i-development efana nabantu baka urban injalo.
In the Western Cape, we visit the small town of Hermanas in the Overstrand local municipality. It is situated 120 kilometers away from Cape Town. In this town, we find the township of Zwelihle, Mount Pleasant, and the affluent suburbs.
Into endihluphayo apha ngamanzi ngumbane. Njengoba nibona imnyama kanje lena ukubaswa ubonakala ndiyagodola izinto zokubekwa abantwana bandinikile zoba ndinganza ihitha ndenze ntoni andinawo umbane.
Into esidingayo apha sidinga amanzi ne-toilet. Toilet zethu zimbalwa and sibaninzi apha eDubai for i-toilet ezimbalwa so and sidinga umbane.
Ndede Ramshwana, Service Delivery Gauge for SABC News.
And there you have it. Goosebumps still just looking at some of those pictures and listening to some of those stories over again. And these are some of the areas that we visited during the insert. And you'll also remember that we were joined during the duration of this broadcast by our two SABC specialist researchers who brought us up to speed with different municipalities and, of course, the voting patterns in those municipalities as well. Emil Umro and Masweli Ralibona, they are, of course, our specialist researchers, and welcome to both of you. Good to have both of you with us tonight. But let me hand it to the two of you to just give us a quick recap in terms of what we saw in these municipalities. Emil, you're up first.
Thank you, Sakina. I remember, let's start off there with the Midval local municipality, which interestingly, out of the 2021 local government elections, is the only municipality in Gauteng which has not got a hung council. I remember we visited the Maitan area, and while service delivery in the city was really good, there was a large disparity between richer suburbs and those poor informal settlements. We then went over to KwaZulu-Natal, my hometown in Pietermaritzburg, the Msunduzi municipality, which after these recent elections has been left as a hung municipality as well. It will be interesting to see what some of the service delivery issues come about as a result of this. However, when we looked into that municipality, the biggest issue, I think, aside from all the service delivery, was the issue of billing. Some residents receiving up to 27,000 Rand a month in billing for rates and electricity, obviously complaining and voicing their concerns to us. Then in the Eastern Cape, as we saw in our insert before, we went to the Makona municipality, where most importantly, issues of water shortages, sewerage, and refuse removal seem to be the biggest highlights for service delivery concerns in that area. Mashwele, where did you look into over the...
Thank you, Emil. Before we can even go to talk about where I've been, I think it's important for us to know that in the Eastern Cape, at Makana, the mayor, when we hosted him online, he confirmed that the municipality even paid 12 million rands for 3 boreholes. That's really disturbing. Okay, let me go to Bembe district. This is where I come from. In the Bembe district, because it's a district, it's composed of 4 municipalities, Makado, Tulamera, Musina, and the Collins Chabani local municipality. So here, issues that were on top were water and the roads. To this day, many of those issues have not been resolved. We then also moved to the Western Cape. I think this was our last municipality to visit. In a small town of Hermanas, we found the municipality of, here we found the municipality of Overstrand. In Overstrand, this is a fishing town. This is a retirement town, a small town small town, and also the council is so small, less than 20 seats in the council. The issues in this municipality was land, where people don't have space to build their houses. People don't have space to build even their shacks. And the community in this municipality took over and they occupied a beachfront, land in the beachfront, and the municipality is fighting them. They want them out. Water, sanitation, those are issues that are affected because of land. Sakina, back to you.
Well, thank you so much, gentlemen. And we are going to take a quick break here now on Service Delivery Cage. When we come back, we'll take you back to Likwa Municipality, where it all started, bringing you updates. And of course, also, we will bring you up to speed with the voting patterns and how it all turned out in the municipalities that we visited. Also introducing some guests, so please stay with us.
You'll be surprised at how little you could pay for car insurance. Like Roger, who pays just 781 Rand a month to insure his 2020 VW Polo. What are you waiting for? SMS car to 44211 or call 08600 60,000 today for great premiums and awesome service from a brand you trust.
We're constantly choosing between things. Chicken or beef, casual or formal, petrol or diesel. I don't want all. I want it all.
Tolagonge, have it all. DSTV Premium.
Ever considered the difference between involvement and commitment? There's nothing wrong with being involved. Nothing wrong with being the weekend warrior, the less than masterful chef, or attending the odd parents meeting because, well, it looks good. Being involved is great if nothing really depends on it. But commitment, now there's a completely different kettle of fish. You're either in or you're out. You're stuck or you're not. More importantly, commitment is a necessary condition for success. In our world of corporate and investment banking, and likely in yours too, commitment is the uncommon denominator. After all, nothing great was ever made by mistake.
And welcome back, and thanks so much for tuning into the final installment of Service Delivery Gauge, at least for now. And we're going to zoom into those municipalities that we had the honor and privilege and at some points the great disappointment of having to visit. And there have been developments in some of those, so we'll bring you up to speed with that as well. Let me introduce our guests now. Tonight we joined via Zoom by the Director of Research at ASRI, that's the Awal Socioeconomic Research Institute, Angelo Fick. And in studio we have with us the COO of SALGA, Lance Joel. And we're also joined by the administrator in the Lekwa municipality, Johan Metler. Gentlemen, welcome to all of you. Thanks so much for being with us. So we're going to start with Lekwa, and let's just go back to our specialist researcher, Emil Umrau, to tell us exactly what happened there and also take us through what happened in the election that we just saw.
Well, thank you, Sakina. If we look back at Lekwa in 2016, the ANC had a clear advantage over the rest of its competitors with 20 seats on council and 65.66% of all votes. However, if we look at 2021, those results are vastly different. The ANC declining massively in Lekwa municipality with just 13 seats and 42% of those votes. The DA, not really much of a change there, but we can see that a lot of the votes from the ANC have been divided apart by the smaller parties in the region, namely the EFF, who's secured 3 seats, the Lekwa Community Forum, who secured 6 seats, becoming the official opposition in Lekwa, interestingly, with 20% of the votes. The Freedom Front Plus as well, with about 10% of the votes there. Shall we hand over then? Maswile, the next municipality that we looked into?
All right. We'll come back to Vemba in just a moment, and just taking a look at what happened in Lekwa there. Thank you so much, Emil. And perhaps to start us off, let's speak to Johan Metler, Administrator. Johan, you were with us during that first show, so we do understand that there have been some developments. We've received some pictures showing that you've at least resurfaced some of the roads and some payments that have been made. Please talk to us about that.
Good evening, Sakina. Yes, we managed some road repairs. There was some pothole. There were some pothole repairs. There were some roads that have been resealed. We have also managed during the for September to pay Eskom a significant amount, 27 million rand in terms of our current account, and that really was the first time in a very long time that the municipality was in a position to make such a payment. The trick obviously is to maintain that, and we have managed with a particular category of customers. We call them our top 250 customers. We have managed to clean out, to clean their data, and in other words, to make sure that they get proper invoices. And we have managed to increase our payment rate there to over 80%. It's still way below the 95% that it should be at, but it's significantly up from the 55% we found it in June of this year. So we have made some progress, but there's still a long way to go, Sakina.
So, Johan, I need to understand, as the administrator, because this council was dissolved, and what's going to happen to you now as the administrator now that elections have taken place?
Sakina, the administrator is only there, or I only act as an administrator until a council has been declared elected. So as soon as we have our first meeting, the new councillors will officially take over. There will be an election of a mayor, speaker, etc. I will then become responsible on behalf of the Minister of Finance to implement the financial recovery plan. So there would have to be very close cooperation with the municipal manager, with the mayoral committee, etc., to ensure that the plan is in fact implemented, and I will then report on progress on that periodically.
And is there any indication of how long you will be in that role for, Johan?
It is not quite clear yet. I do expect that to be clarified within the next week, certainly by the Ministry of Finance. But the plan that we've put on the table, that is, if I recall correctly, for 24 months. So it will be at least for 24 months that there must be somebody there to ensure that this financial recovery plan is implemented and that council complies with all that it needs to comply with in terms of that plan.
So just a final question, Johan. In terms of where you found Liqua municipality when you got there, council had to be dissolved. I see you say you've managed to settle the current account for September to the tune of 27 million rand. And it's the first time in a long, long time that this amount of money has been able to be paid by Liqua municipality. So just give us a sense of where you're leaving this council at as the rest of the elected representatives take over.
Look, I do think that we're in a position where we can now see the mud clearly, if I can use that expression. So we know where the problems are. We know where the capacity constraints are, both in terms of the administration itself, as well as the level of service delivery that's currently taking. We have managed to improve service delivery somewhat, but obviously, it is from a very, very low base. So the new council is coming into a slightly better scenario than the old one. But I have to stress there is still lots and lots of work ahead.
Johan Metler, thank you so much for just giving us a quick update on what's happened. And good to know that there has been some improvement. Some stitches of road have been resurfaced. And as you heard there, some monies have been paid, accounts being serviced. So it's going to be interesting to see how the picture changes moving forward. All right, let's go back to our specialist researchers. Maswile, you went to Vhembe, and let's take a look at what happened in Vhembe before the elections and, of course, after.
Thank you, Sakina. Because Vhembe is a district municipality and the results of district municipalities are not readily available after voting, we check the results of the municipalities that forms the district. We start in Vhembe. In Vhembe, Sakina, the ANC is leading and they have increased their margins from 56 seats to 62 seats, which means from 74% to 79% in 2021. The DA decreased from 9 seats to 5 seats, EFF 7 seats to 4 seats, Shimoko had 1 seat in 2016 and they don't have anything. COPE also biting the dust there, ACDP 1 and now they have 1 seat again. IRC, they didn't participate in 2016 and they now have 1 seat. Let's go to the next slide. There. FF Plus also participated in these elections and they have 1 seat. You've got APC of Tembagodi. There they have 1 seat in Makhado local municipality. The next slide, Sakina, we see the Collins Chabani municipality. This municipality was formed in 2016 after the elections. And now, Sakina, ANC had 60 seats and now they have 55 seats, which means they've gone down from 84% in 2016 to 75% in 2021. The EFF, this is the home of EFF Deputy President Floyd Shivambu. EFF 6 seats in 2016 and now they are sitting comfortably with 7 seats, 9.7%. 9.1%. The DA, 2 seats, they've gone down, one seat now. XP, which is Shimoko Party, 1 seat, they now retain their seat in 2021. ACDP, 1 seat, they retain their seat. AL, 2 seats. KYN, 1 seat. As we go forward, the next slide. Sakina, APC of Tembagodi also participated in the Collins Chabani local municipality. They've got 1 seat. The PAC, they also participated here. They have 1 seat. and there was an independent. You'll remember out of more than 1,500 independents, only more than 50 of them managed to get seats in these local government elections, and one of them is in Collins Chabani municipality. We go to the next slide where we find Thulamela. This is the hometown of Bembe District Municipality. That's where you find their offices. ANC was at 64 in 2016 with 78%, and they have increased their margins there to 71 seats and 85.1%. The EFF, they had 8 seats, and now they have 4 seats. The DA, 4 seats, and now they have 2 seats. PAC, 2 seats, they now have 1 seat. ACDP, 1, and now they also retain their seat. IRC, they had 1, now this time around they didn't get anything. The next slide, Sakina. We go to Musina local municipality. This is where we will find the infamous Beitbridge border. The ANC, 18, they increased their margins from 74% to 72%, which means now they are sitting at 19 seats. The DA, 3 seats in 2016, and they are now 2 seats, which means it's 1 seat down. EFF, 3 seats, they are now 2 seats, 1 seat down also. FF Plus, they didn't have a seat in 2016, and they now have 1 seat.
Well, thank you so much, Maswili. And of course, we did go back to find out if anything had changed post our visit. And I can tell you that the Rabali intersection, that's on the R23 in Zelele, that was also resealed a day after our broadcast. So we understand the very following day work started happening there, and in the next few weeks there was some work being done. So that's some of the feedback we can give you from the Vembe district. All right, let's come back to our guests now. Angelo, if I could start with you, just looking at what we found and the opportunity that we had to really go down and do a little bit of digging, just pull back the layers in some of these municipalities. And the fact that things could be done post our visit shows that where there is a will, there is a way. And if these municipalities really want to, they actually can do better.
Yes, precisely, Sakina. And I think one of the positives we can take out of this is the functioning of the public broadcaster. As the fourth estate, the media and journalists really have to hold politicians and private power to account. And here's an example where politicians actually responded not to citizens, but to the embarrassment of having their maladministration appear on our national television screens. And so this, I think, is a positive element that journalists really should take courage from, that this kind of work is essential to democracy. But also the citizens, I think, need to be also aware of just how valuable a journalistic interest is and how valuable public news media can be when it comes to holding public officials to account. And here one hopes that the public officials don't wait for the next journalistic visit from the SABC, but actually perform in relation to the performance of the voters.
And that is concerning, isn't it, Angelo? Because it shouldn't be about responding to embarrassment. It should be that you do what you are elected to do. You do exactly what you are mandated to do and what your legislative function compels you to do. Why is that so difficult?
I think partly it's been, that not the right people were deployed into the right positions. So we've had people deployed into positions where they couldn't really function. And Johan Bettler really, is the kind of person who's then deployed to people's mess ups. And he's got a very good record on that. But I think it's tragic that people like Johan Bettler are not necessarily best placed in that position. There shouldn't be clean-up men and women. There should be the people who govern our municipalities, and there should be more of them in these positions. And the problem, I think, that has happened in South Africa is the very policy that the president of the party that governs so much of South Africa and that the president of the country defended at the Zondo Commission. The cadre deployment is considered to be, the non-negotiable for the African National Congress. And then they hold up particular kinds of cadres who do very good jobs. But for the many people in district municipalities like Vembe and elsewhere, particularly in Makanda and other places, It is precisely the cadre deployment that results in the non-delivery. And beyond merely taking an oath of office and taking on the responsibility of public representation, these are also people paid by tax money to do this work. And so when they don't do the work, they really are mooching literally off of the rest of the country.
And of course, the Chief Operations Officer of SALGA, Lance Joel, also with us this evening. Lance, and just looking at what has happened and the outcome of the local government elections 2021, South Africa has decided, and very interestingly so. So a lot of talk at this point centers around the need for coalitions, and we've already seen the toenaderings between some political parties as they try to find the best partners with whom to go into these coalitions with. But we still have issues, outstanding business, as it were, where a party like the ANC, for example, have not necessarily decided on some of the people who will be going into certain positions in these councils. How does that hamper this process?
Well, good evening, Sakina, and also good evening to Angelo and the viewers. Well, I think if I need to opine on the ANC's moves, I think they are approaching with a bit more caution. Indeed, there is a 14-day period that remains, and should the IEC tomorrow declare by formally gazetting the results, the 14-day period kickstarts. We have heard that some of the parties that have not concluded their mayoral candidates prior to the elections will go through a process of identifying who their mayoral candidates will be. In hindsight, it is probably the best position that the ANC finds itself in, particularly where it still has to look at whether they would govern in those municipalities. So it's an interesting development, and we are hoping that something we have said as SALGA leading up to the elections, that the right people will be identified to take over the responsibilities given to them, whether it's a speaker, whether it is a mayor, or any other office bearer position that would be determined. So it will be interesting to see what would unfold, but certainly in hindsight is probably the best thing that could have happened to the ANC.
Well, rather than hope, do you actually have do you hold any sort of sway in terms of being able to prevail upon the parties in some way or form to say, guys, can we please have a municipal manager who, or rather a mayoral candidate who has these sort of qualities, or a speaker who has these sort of qualities? Not?
Well, Shakina, leading up to the elections, we did quite a bit of work, and part of the work included exactly what you're speaking about. We developed role profiles for each position, and linked to each of those role profiles, we also identified what are the key attributes required of a person that would be deployed into those particular positions. And we put it out there for political parties to look into.
How was it received?
I think it's been received quite positively. If you follow the trend, what is happening now, if indeed the party that is governing the most number of municipalities is indeed saying we are going to do something different, which is we are going to interview candidates. So we are going to go through a process that will include interviews where people will come and pitch what they are going to offer over the next 5 years. For us, that is certainly a move in the right direction. And hopefully, I know you don't want to hear the word hopefully, we will get the right candidates into those positions.
How feasible is that actually, Angelo? Given the infighting that we have seen in political parties, are you hopeful that we would see the right people coming through from the various political parties?
I think I'm going to maintain a kind of, which is pessimism of intellect and optimism of will. I'm hoping, optimistically, that the will that is professed by various parties, that they will choose the right candidate for the post and for the people prevails over my pessimism of the historical record. And that, I think, is about the patronage networks and the people who need to be rewarded for getting people in onto the list and from the list onto the candidature. And so how open these interviews will be will have to be seen, and whether or not that very process that President Cyril Ramaphosa, as president of the ANC and as president of the country, defended at the Zondo Commission of Inquiry into State Capture, that process of cadre deployment and how it can undermine all of these very nice wishes and aspirations to work above board, that needs to be seen. And I think for many South Africans, they may not have the same confidence as the head of SALGA. And SALGA does really valuable work, but again, they can't dictate to parties what to do. What happens inside the party caucus can often be very different from what SALGA desires as the sort of larger body representing local government and its structures.
But given the state of our municipalities, given the latest Auditor's General report, and I'm going to put this to both Angelo and you, Lance, if we look at the dire state in which our municipalities find themselves by and large, can we really afford as a country to continue on this trajectory? Surely something needs to change. Angelo?
Absolutely. And the South African Local Government Association does really valuable work with new councillors to get them into a sense of what their duties are and how to work. And there are many, many training programs, but the clock is no longer at a minute to midnight. In many of these municipalities, if you look at Mfuleni, if you look at Mgeni, if you look at Makanda, the clock is now at 1:15 midnight, and people are living with the consequences of what was the fallout of the explosion at midnight of maladministration and poor governance. And this happens across very many municipalities and provinces like the Eastern Cape, the Free State. And so this isn't just about the ANC survival or the survival of councillors. This is now about the survival, in some cases, literally, given what's running down the streets in these municipalities and the quality of the water, of the citizens and the residents themselves. And so there is no margin for error left because there are bigger crises that will have to be faced. And this one has to be resolved in this particular period, these next 5 years, given the other challenges and the global challenges that are coming even for the local level of governance in South Africa in the second half of this decade.
Lance?
Well, Sakina, across all of the political parties, we may be thinking 5 years. I don't think political parties think 5 years. We are 2.5 years away from the next elections, and therefore political parties would want to use the 2.5 years to indeed show to the electorate that there's more that they can offer. So there are two things that political parties would have to look at and respond to. And there's two things that came out over the last week. Voter apathy. Secondly, the fact that the electorate has decided that they do not want a party to govern. They want a number of parties to govern and respond to their needs. So it would be important that political parties, as they're gearing for the next elections, they use the 2.5 years to respond to those two challenges. In the absence thereof, we can only assume that the electorate will punish political parties for not responding accordingly and appropriately.
And just how are they going to do that under the system that we have going forward, if indeed these parties continue to fail, especially in the areas that we have covered and seen where there have been spectacular failures, where they fail, where to, even for the electorate. But let's go back to our specialist researchers, Maswili and Emil, just to see some of the other municipalities that we managed to visit here on Service Delivery Gauge.
Thank you, Sakina. Well, if we look back at the Midvaal municipality, it seems that the voters in Midvaal have given their confidence once again to the DA, who have increased their stronghold over the municipality now with 19 seats and 62.69% of those votes. The ANC again in decline here from 9 seats to 6. The EFF remain relatively stable, not changing very much rather than in its percentage. And the Freedom Front Plus gaining a seat in this municipality and 4 additional percentages of those votes. The TYM as well picked up a seat in the Midvaal municipality.
Right, and that's Midvaal. And of course, this is where we see where the voters seemingly happy with the administration that they had in part and making sure they return them, and with a few more seats. That's Democratic Alliance in Midvaal. So we'll run through all of those municipalities, but let us quickly remind you of our WhatsApp number. And that number, of course, we have is 083-272-8341. And if you'd like, we're going to take a quick break, but you can call us afterwards, 011-714-8052. And we're asking you whether you're satisfied with the party or councillor that won in your area. You can also send us your tweets, our handle at SABC News, or you can go to our Facebook page, Service Delivery Gauge. All of that coming up after the break. Welcome back, and you're still watching Service Delivery Gauge, and we are, of course, bringing you into the conversation now. It has been, still is an interactive show. If you want to give us a call, 011-714-8052. Let me say that slowly. I'm always accused of saying it too fast. 011-714-8052. And of course, you can send us your videos on WhatsApp, 083-272-8341. And of course, before I continue with the discussions with our guests, Angelo Fick and Lance Joel, let's just take a quick look at some of the messages that you sent us. And we'll start with the tweets that have come through. This one is from Tseko, who says, poor voter turnout shows how voters are so discouraged because of the lack of service delivery, corruption, which led to the commission after commission with 0 convictions, and also mismanagement of funds, etc. Thanks, Tseko. Christine says, as a South African, I voted for the DA. Now, this time, I refuse to vote for anyone. They can't be trusted. Clean up the crime and clean the streets and then fix the potholes. That's from Christine. Interesting, Christine. Shadri says, because Action SA was not in my area, ballot paper, I did not vote. Brilliant writes to us saying, I'm satisfied with the results. Next time, people will vote instead of only complaining online. Thanks so much, Brilliant, and everybody else who wrote to us there. And you can, of course, go to the various pages that I mentioned and interact with the comments coming through. But Angelo, just before we go back to our specialist researchers, just looking at those tweets and what is being mentioned there, Christine saying she refused to vote this time around. And I think it was Tseko also made the point, many people simply did not bother to go and cast a ballot. Let's talk to that, because I think what we have basically dispelled is the notion of a simple voter apathy problem. The problem seems to be bigger than that.
Absolutely. And if we look at the communities where you had local community forums standing, so in Makanda, in Namakoi, in various other places, the voters, had an option of local people that they knew that weren't subjected to the kind of party structures that the Constitutional Court found often interfered with accountability at the national level when it came to what people said they would represent and what they ended up doing. The problem, I think, for South Africa as a country is that we can ill afford to have a continuous slide of voter participation. The majority of this country's population is under 35. To a large extent, government is kind of dominated by people who are over 60. The challenges, therefore, that are being created in this moment will be inherited by people who currently are underrepresented on the voters' roll, and the challenges being created are being, done so by people who are overrepresented in political power. That has to shift, because if we continue along this trend, if fewer people end up voting, and those who do vote are in the stages where they're at the end of their lives, in the 60-plus period, we sit with a situation that elsewhere on the continent has led to great political instability that we can ill afford and do not want. And so while we are not unlike other Africans generally, to reverse what Jacob Zuma told that Wits audience in 2013, we need to take the lessons from elsewhere in the continent and actually re-engage young people and all people, particularly the most vulnerable in poorer communities, to re-engage the political process. And that's the responsibility not just of political parties, but of everybody in the society and all civic organizations.
So we also have a call coming through. Let's hear from Unga in Nongoma in KwaZulu-Natal, just to find out what your thoughts are. And the question we're asking, Unga, is, are you satisfied with how the results have turned out from the election? Good evening, Unga.
Yebo, sisekunjani sisi?
Siyaphila buti unjani wena?
Ngiyaphila ngokuwa ngihlala eBizana. NgingakwaNongoma.
Okay.
Sisi anikho happy sorry?
No, qhubeka buti.
Ngithi anikho happy sisi ngendlela esithethwe ngayo le KwaZulu-Natal. Umgwaqo asinawo, abantu abethu uma besikoleni bayasokola kodwa sibhizi siyavota. Niboke nihambe naleya ndawo yangakithi kwaNongoma ke nibheke ukuba kwenzeka kanjani. Sisele sisemva, asinamgwaqo, asinamanzi, kodwa siyavota. Siyabona lolu hlelo liyasinceda sizoba siyalimamela every day ingxoxo zenu enizenzayo, kodwa asikho happy. Siyasinceda kakhulu. Make nithumele nasemakhaya, behambele emakhaya, bebone emakhaya, bahlupheka abantu emakhaya.
Unga, thanks so much for calling us. Unga saying basically the issues that were raised incidentally during service delivery gauge programs, the issue of roads, issue of water, that continues. And I don't know how many times the same things can be said over and over again in terms of why there seems to be no delivery of these, given that municipalities, they do have the budgets, because we saw in at least 2 of the areas that we visited after our visit as service delivery gauge, there was some work done on the roads. So, Lance, again, you speak to these municipalities, to the people in these municipalities, perhaps more often than the rest of us. What is the problem?
Well, Shakina, I think we can lament about the problems, but we've now seen an election, and leading up to the elections, political parties came and made promises through their manifestos. 2 things would have to happen, and certainly from a SALWA point of view, these are the 2 things that we will be reminding our municipalities of. The first one is that it is now time to give effect to those promises and respond to the manifesto through its implementation. The second thing is probably the most critical one, is door-to-door is not a pre-election requirement only. Door-to-door should become a common development in our country, so that people, through your door-to-door engagements, you are giving them information, reporting, saying, by the way, we came and we made the following promises to you. This is how we have responded. Secondly, is there anything else that may have changed since we were here the last time, so that our municipalities keep their fingers on the pulse. They know exactly what is happening within their community. So it is important that those manifestos must be implemented. We will be reminding our municipalities of that. And secondly, ensure that there's ongoing interaction and engagement with communities, not only reporting, but also assessing if anything would have changed, so that they can be more responsive to those realities. And those are the things that we would be pushing over the next 5 years.
Just before we go back to our researchers, Angelo, should we be legislating for the things that Lance speaks about? Because it's all good to know that this should happen, but it doesn't happen.
Well, there is legislation in place. I mean, the Constitution requires a provincial and national government to hold local government to account and to cooperate. The 3 tiers of government have to cooperate to ensure that people's constitutional rights are, realized. But the second problem is, of course, the civil service. So in these municipalities, particularly where they're not in massive cities, but smaller communities, the patronage network of the governing party in that municipality often sort of stymies and scuppers the idea of a civil service. And we've seen this in a variety of spectacular examples, where a civil servant, whether it is the treasurer of the municipality, says we only have to use a bank, we can't use a building society. That person simply gets suspended. The idea of a professional civil service that is independent of the party mechanisms is something that's very difficult for many South Africans to imagine, but it is absolutely essential because we have to have a cadre of people, a group of people whose employment is not going to be determined negatively or positively by their loyalty to a party in power, either at the district or even at the local level. And that, I think, is crucial. Mamphela Ramphele said as much in 2008. We've learned the lesson and again that actually, if you do not have a professionalized civil service, what you have is politicians who interfere in the process, as Faith Mazibuko did in the famous Combi Court scenario a few years ago.
And I guess what I was referring to more pointedly, Angelo, is the elected representatives having to go back to their communities, to their constituencies, because the reality is that it is not happening. So how do we get around that?
So here is where participative democracy is going to be crucial. So even if your community forum or your residents association didn't win a seat, the proceedings of the council should be open to the public and people should go there and participate, because there are several civic organizations and non-governmental organizations that will assist residents in holding people to their word. And if they have to go all the way to court to do so, then that's what they'll have to do, as we've seen in several municipalities across South Africa. And this should then be a lesson for communities that people who don't make good on their promises really shouldn't be re-elected. And that's part of the democratizing process in South Africa. People shouldn't just ride on what they did 20 years ago, what they did 50 years ago, what they did 10 years ago. It is what they're doing in this moment and what they're not doing that should determine whether or not they get your support as a voter.
Let's go back to our specialist researchers now to look at some of the other municipalities that we visited here on Service Delivery Gauge. Emil and Maswili.
Thank you, Sakina. Let's go to the municipality in the Eastern Cape, the Makana municipality, the home of Rhodes University. The ANC dropped, Sakina, and at this point, the ANC have 14 seats. Dropping from 17 in 2016. DA 8 seats in 2016, and they have 5 in 2020 elections. The EFF 2, and again they retained their seats. They've got 2. The Makana, the Makana Civic Association, they have 5 seats, and 1 independent managed to get a seat.
That certainly is very interesting. Emil, which is the next one?
Well, Sakina, let's look at Msunduzi. The ANC had vast stronghold in the city leading up to the 2021 local government elections, with 52 seats on council and 66% of all votes. They've seemed to decline, and that maybe could go towards the state of the city that is currently in. They've declined to 40 seats, losing that majority, and 48.32% of all votes. The DA remaining relatively stable as well, from 15 to 16 votes. The IFP growing substantially, from 5 to 8 seats. The EFF as well, a large gainer in the Msunduzi municipality, getting an additional 7 seats compared to the 3 that they had in 2016, with an additional 7% of all total votes. Smaller parties like the AIC, the ACDP, and Al Jamaa also well represented in 2021.
Sakina, we go to Overstrand in the Western Cape. The DA there showing the smaller parties how to do it. We see from 16 seats in 2016 to 17 seats in these elections. ANC, they now have 4 seats, dropping from 8. EFF, 1 seat in 2016, and they also have 1 seat in this local government elections. The new kid in the block, the Land Party, they were not there in 2016, and now they have 2 seats in the local council. FF Plus, they have 2 seats in the local council. ACDP, they also have 1 seat in the local council.
Well, thank you so much to our specialist researchers, Maswili Ralibona and Emil Umra. And interesting that most of the civic organizations that we hosted here have all made inroads and they've all gained seats in this particular election. So very interesting that the people showed faith in them. And just an update on what happened in Overstrand post our visit there. On the 4th of October, a few days after we visited this municipality, there was a meeting to address the community about the high municipal accounts, and also the community got an apology for the inconvenience that was caused. So some feedback we have for you from Overstrand. Well, we don't have much time. Angelo, again, just looking at what's been happening here. And I suppose part of the story is in the numbers, those seats, I suppose. If you look at Msunduzi there, the ANC in 2016, 52 seats, down to 40 in this election. So 12 people not returning there to that council. And that's something that they are going to have to manage.
Precisely, and this could cause tensions inside the party, because those are people who are deployed there, have patronage networks that they would have to satisfy, and that's the same case for Makanda. I happen to have lived in both of those towns, having worked at both Rhodes and UKZN, and these are not new problems. These problems stem from the middle of the last decade, the 2005 to 2007 period. Water quality in both municipalities, services like refuse removal and management of wastewater, crucial issues because they started affecting the health of the people who live in those spaces. And this means that, again, as Lance pointed out, and as Johan knows from his administration of Lekwe, that there isn't a really wide window of opportunity to intervene. The intervention has to be immediate to get the residents the quality of life that we've promised them for the last 27 years in South Africa. And that is something that I think political parties, civic organizations, and all residents have to work together, because it's all of us together or none of us at all, because this idea that things end at the municipal boundary, we know that's not the case. And we will have relatives who live in municipalities that are worse off than the ones we find ourselves in. And therefore, this is not some other country in which it's happening. It's happening to us in our lives and all of us together. Indeed.
And Lance, you spoke about what you have put on the table, not only in terms of hopefully the caliber of cadres that would be deployed to these municipalities by the various political parties, but also just in terms of coalitions, a sort of framework that hopefully the political parties would take to heart.
Shakina, I mean, if you look at the commentary over the last 2 days since we have released our framework, coalition framework, I get a sense that parties have listened. And certainly when you look at the menu of things already being put together, so parties are bracing themselves, linked to their manifestos to go into coalition conversations, which is very encouraging because it is ultimately about delivery of services. And it comes across out of all of the lists that you would have seen from the party. So the next 14 days, perhaps 12 days, are quite critical on anchoring this term of office. And as you said, let's get the right people into the right positions and get back to business, which is delivering services.
And we will, of course, endeavour to keep our eye on the ball and give you a voice to make sure that you are heard. Well, South Africa, it's been an interesting 2 months. I tell you, we're running on empty here after the elections, but wouldn't have been able to put it out without the wonderful team that made this happen. The people in my ear, Prasanza, Mbali, and of course everybody else, the researchers, too many to mention. Read the credits as they roll. It's been absolutely fabulous. And of course to our bosses, Dee, Sispat, you've been absolutely wonderful for the support that you've given us. But please, every single one who played a role, thank you so much. And of course, to the MVPs, that's you at home and our guests, thank you so much for being with us on this journey. And thank you for your support, because I must just tell you, I've just been told, because of the positive interaction you as the viewer have given us here on Service Delivery Gauge, this means that the show will definitely come back, and that's in the not too distant future. So yeah, you can pop the champagne for those who drink. I'm going home. And of course, we'll give you another platform here on Service Delivery Gauge to give us your views on what's happening in your area. So from me and the rest of the team, thank you so much for your participation and for being with us every Sunday evening and during the weekly shows. Please take care, and we'll see you next time.